Welcome, Buff fans. It is the off season, and we got to fill some content somehow, right, Nikki? And so I decided to catch up with Nikki Edwards of the CU Sports Report on the Rivals Network, and we're going to try to do this with some of the other beat writers that you all know and love. And Nikki, we were talking beforehand, like no plan. I just want to chat about uh, the season. I don't even want to say recap the season, but I guess it sort of is. But kind of look back at the 24 season and kind of what's next for the Buffs and get your thoughts on all that. And but first off, how's your off season going? Have you been able to breathe a little bit after kind of the whirlwind that was the season and especially December?
Yeah. Usually, I mean, as us reporters, we haven't had a postseason in a while, so December's looked a little different, but
Yeah.
with the Buffs playing BYU, the preparation was a little bit different. Us all going down to San Antonio, and yeah, the Alamo hasn't treated Colorado very well in past years, and this year it didn't, but it was super fun. I've never been to San Antonio, and I just feel like this season overall, I was able to travel a lot more. My company paid for my travel expenses. I was able to go to all these new places and, new chapter in the Big 12, and it was really fun, and I'm excited to, expand my horizons. I didn't go to Florida this year though. That was the one game I did miss. But other than that, Arrowhead was really awesome. Never been to Arizona. Um, I know in the Pac-12, I definitely missed that last year, maybe going to Autzen Stadium or like the Rose Bowl, but
Yeah.
I'm young. We'll see. I'll might get there eventually. But December was good. I did holidays with my family. It was great, and got exchange gifts, and then New Year's Eve, and now it's January. It's 2025. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow.
It's going fast too, because it's like, I mean, it's crazy. The Alamo Bowl was almost 2 weeks ago, as we're doing this. And you mentioned going to San Antonio. We also, most of us, you went to New York City as well, for the
Oh
Heisman, which is
yeah.
something that,
Remember that.
none of us have, I don't think any of us had ever covered before. There might have been
hmm
somebody that had done in a previous job, but obviously none of us that cover CU have covered a Buff being down there because it had been a very very long time since anybody from CU was in the Heisman conversation.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I've been traveling with the bus for 10 years, and I thought this year was a lot of fun, just kind of seeing some new venues, and that was my favorite part about the switch to the Big 12 was like, all right, there's some new places, and my first year really covering the Buffs, 2010. I traveled a little bit, and they were in the Big 12, but it was a much
hmm
different Big 12. I mean, there was no West Virginia or TCU and BYU and Cincinnati and UCF, things like that. And so my trips back in 2010 were Nebraska, Oklahoma, Kansas, things like
Yeah.
that.
The
So
flat states.
yeah, and so this year was kind of fun. So I guess since we're talking about travel, I'll go there. What was your favorite trip? Not game, but what was your favorite trip, just on a personal level?
I know. I can't believe I like completely breezed over. I mean, New York. New York was one of my favorites for sure.
Yeah.
I think New York, and despite the Buffs losing in Nebraska, Nebraska was really fun. It's like we were staying at this hotel, and like right when you walked in, it was like the Nebraska hotel because it was two
Yeah.
blocks away from the stadium. So it was like all Nebraska fans. The elevators were decorated. Like it was a whole thing there, and um like we were able to meet up with like Jake Schwanitz and like Scott and like the DNVR crew and hang out with them like uh after games and like before the game, and we were able to explore the city a lot, and we had a good time to
Yeah.
say the least. We had a good time in Nebraska. And New York was, I just love going to New York. I went to New York for the first time over the summer, and I was so happy I was able to experience it during the winter and
Mhm.
staying in Times Square, and it's Christmassy. It's just like, it was really cold. Don't get me wrong, but it was really fun. I think the uniqueness of the event, all of us covering the Heisman ceremony and this athlete we've been watching for, the past 2 years, like one of the most miraculous and spectacular players we've seen, I've ever seen, a
Yeah.
player that hasn't done anything like that in college football. And I think just the reasoning behind all, like why we were all there and we all made it out there. And my company did not pay for that travel, but it was worth it 100%. Like I was like, I just have to go because I don't think I'll have another experience like this. And it was totally worth it. Everything that we were able to do. I got pizza, I got a bagel, had all the food. I had really good Italian food. And yeah, I did as much as I could do in a matter of 48 hours in New York. And I flew on a helicopter. That was like the biggest thing.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
Nigel, my photographer, he organized that and he was like, there's this company called Blade and you fly from JFK to Manhattan on a helicopter. I'm like, sure. I'm like, why
Yeah.
not? And that was one of the best experiences, probably like my top five like life experiences. On top of it being like a really cool work trip and then flying in and like the sun was rising over the city. It was just like one of those like, wow, like
Yeah.
I didn't not like I made it moments, but like I guess in a sense I did make it to New York, but it was just
Yeah.
really cool.
That's awesome. I've never flown in a helicopter, and um yeah, it'd be fun to do that. And yeah, New York was an awesome trip. New York City at the holidays is that's pretty awesome. I'm not a big city person, but New York City at
Mhm.
that time of year was pretty awesome. And yeah, I mean, it was fun going to Central Park and doing all those things. But the reason being there was so awesome. Obviously Travis Hunter, winning the Heisman Trophy, and it was for me, it was kind of a weird feeling like going in there like, yeah, I know this guy's gonna win, but then there in your mind it's like, but what if he doesn't? Am I
Yeah,
prepared for
right?
that too? And so like you had all your stuff, at least for me, I had all my stories ready for him winning, but I'm like,
Hmm.
I better be prepared just in case there's this shocker because you never know. And I'm glad it didn't happen. So I actually have um, just a little thing that sports writers do that you sometimes on games, when it's a tight game, you'll have okay, I better write a story that they won and better have one that they lost because you got to post right away. And I actually had
Hmm.
that with Travis Hunter, so I have this ditched story about him not winning the Heisman Trophy that I was glad I didn't have to use. And I
The
didn't like it
graveyard
as
of
much as
stories.
yeah, I didn't like it as much as the one about him winning, so I'm glad he
Yeah.
won. And so that was pretty cool. UCF was fun. um Orlando obviously was being hit by, not Orlando, but like Florida's being hit by a hurricane at the time, but Orlando was
Hmm.
not. And so we were fortunate there, but that was a fun trip. And yeah, and not that these were my favorite cities, but it was cool to see the atmospheres in Lubbock,
Yeah.
and just some different types of places. So it was a lot of fun. And yeah, just a fun season overall, and memorable, that's for sure. I mean, out of all the years I've covered CU, it's right up there with 2016 as the best seasons, but probably
Hmm.
also the most memorable. And a lot of it was Travis Hunter, and
Yeah.
so maybe let's just go there and like what are your favorite Travis Hunter moments from this past season? I mean, there's so many of them, but do you have a favorite Travis Hunter moment?
Oh man. Overall, definitely number one that comes to my mind was definitely last year, the TCU interception.
Yeah,
Um, Also, the he's had some incredible grabs. The one against Utah when he was in like triple or like double coverage, and you just see him just arise out of all of these guys. And I just
yeah,
gotten some amazing photos of Travis. Definitely his game sealing forced fumble. I was there standing on the sideline with Matt, and it was right in front of me. I saw the whole play, and I was like, wow, that was definitely one of my favorite games of the season. Of course, when you get a Hail Mary and then win a game like that, it's
yeah,
definitely one that you can't forget. Yeah, there's just watching him game after game is was one of my favorite things because we would
yeah,
just be sitting in the press box. I sit next to Jake and my coworker Troy, and like they'll just be talking over each other, and then we're like, "Oh my God, did Travis Hunter just do that?" And like,
right,
just it's just Travis Hunter. It's just what he does. He
yeah,
was he was really really great, and definitely what my favorite moment was the game sealing forced fumble and the catch he had against Utah. Even though the Utah game wasn't as exciting, it's just he has like those moments of like, wow,
yeah.
yeah, he can just do that.
Well, and yeah, some would argue that wasn't even his most exciting play at Utah because he had uh the the play where wait, was that Utah or Oklahoma State? Where he
Mm,
ran it in for the touchdown. That was Utah, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, didn't he? Was that the one they were gonna do the throw to Shador and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
Shador? That
Yeah,
was
that
that
was you.
Oklahoma State.
Well, I can't remember. It's all
I think
running
it was
together.
yeah, because I know they really beat Oklahoma State and they were trying to
Yeah.
do something like
Yeah. I think it was Utah. It's funny how you like We covered
Right?
all this stuff, but
What
like
was that?
I can't remember what it was. But that play
I
was kind
remember
of,
it though.
yeah, that play was obviously it was a broken play, but it's moments like that that I love from Travis that he turns something that's not going well sometimes into a really memorable play. But I honestly think my favorite moment from Travis was actually just seeing him open up a little bit at the Heisman ceremony and or at the Heisman weekend. And I know it's not on the field, it's not a
Definitely.
play, but Travis is a quiet person.
Hmm.
He doesn't do a lot of media with us, and I'm not complaining about that. He just doesn't do that, and so we haven't gotten a chance to really know him super well.
Hmm.
He's really good when he does it, but he was really, really good that weekend, and really kind of opened up. And everybody saw the speech. And he obviously opened up and showed a lot of emotions there. But it was really great the couple times we had the media scrums with him, and he obviously had to sit there and just take questions for a while, which is not his
Yeah.
comfort zone, but he did a really good job with it. And that was one of my favorite moments. And talking to him about, like, I remember I asked him a question. I said, Travis, do you feel like that you've grown to love Colorado more than you ever thought you would? And he said, and he just kind of beamed and he goes, yes, absolutely. He goes, I really never thought I would like it here. And I didn't want to come here. And it turns out, I mean, he's said multiple times that, he would like to stay here. He would love to play for the Broncos because that means he could stay in Colorado because he loves his neighbors and the way people have treated him. And so, it's just been interesting to watch him evolve a little bit. And I think a lot of these players actually, have realize that they've grown to love Colorado more than maybe they thought they
Hmm.
would. I think you can see it a little bit out of Shador. You can see it out of Coach Prime.
Yeah,
You can see it
yeah,
out of Cam,
definitely.
Sylvan Craig, guys like that. But I think that was sticking with Travis. I think that was one of my favorite moments was seeing him um, with the media Heisman
Hmm.
weekend because that's not where we see him a lot of times. That's not his comfort zone, but he really, I thought, knocked it out of the park. He was fantastic media wise that weekend. So that was a lot of fun.
I totally agree. I remember asking him, I asked him about Coach Prime's impact on his career, like his message to him back at Jackson State, and he answered those questions like really, really thoughtfully and eloquently, and like you said, we just don't get him a lot, and to see him in like that light and just the whole event and have him win all of these awards and then the most prestigious award in college football is it was just a great weekend overall. And Travis did, of course, Travis knocked it out of the park
Yeah, yeah.
in New York.
Of course, the funny thing is we get this generational talent with Travis Hunter. We've been able to watch over the last couple of years, and at the same time, we have this generational quarterback we've been able to cover. Shador Sanders is, frankly, if there wasn't the Travis Hunter, Shador Sanders might have been one of the front runners for the Heisman Trophy and down there in New York and
Yeah, you prepared that story too, and I did too.
yeah, yeah. I mean that I had that one ready that he was going to be a Heisman finalist, but couldn't use that story unfortunately. But um, he should have been down there. He was on my ballot. I'm a Heisman voter, and he was number 3 on my ballot. I felt he should have been
Hmm.
there, and but just I've really enjoyed getting to cover Shador and getting to know him a little bit. The little bit we can get to know these guys, and obviously they're going to be a little bit more guarded with us and Shador's he's opened up more like on his own podcast than maybe he does with us, but he's been really good with us too, and
Hmm.
I've really enjoyed getting to know him as well. And um it, I'm not going to forget Travis, but I'm not going to forget Shador either.
Yeah, same with Cam too. I feel like I don't know, just like the defense overall this year, like last year, of course, it was just atrocious. They were one of the worst
Yeah,
defenses in college football. And I think the way that Robert Livingston turned around, the way that Cam became like the most like notable leader within that defense, as well as like Mikhail Green, but he was kind of a newer guy. But you saw like that development with Cam, and now you see like some viable draft stock with Cam where it's like, okay, maybe a smaller safety. Safeties are sometimes hard. Really talented safeties are hard to come by, and I think with Cam we saw one of Colorado's like I don't know. You've been covering a lot longer than me, but I would put him up there with one of the better safeties, one of the best safeties that Colorado's had, and I appreciated his candor and just the way that he spoke with us during the season, and you could tell really people like gathered around him and really appreciated what he had to say, what he had to contribute within that defense. And
Yeah.
yeah, every year it's like, what is it going to look like? Especially now, it's like, what's this quarterback situation going to look like? And at least Colorado can end on this like high note of a 9-3 season. They haven't done that since 2016. So Coach Prime mentioned it of when we were at the Alamo Bowl, this expectation of winning that Colorado didn't
Hmm.
have prior. And
Yep.
this next season, of course, we're going to look for that. But I'm interested to see how different it looks and if Colorado can actually commit to the run, because I feel like that's how they got beat against BYU. It's like these one-dimensional offenses, they can these defenses can really exploit them if they're always anticipating the pass. And I think that's ultimately like what really got them. BYU
Yeah.
was, they've always been a balanced offense, but it was just one of those things throughout the season. It's like they could have been at 10 wins, they could have been
Right.
here or there, and it's maybe that wasn't the whole reason why they weren't maybe in the CFP conversation. But I mean, you saw it against Kansas. It's like some of these teams are so great at running the football, maybe taking a page out of their book and applying it. I know that the offensive line did a better job in pass blocking for sure. And every
Yeah.
week they're like, "Oh, you're going to commit to the run. What's the run going to look like?" And it wasn't fully developed. Sometimes it was against UCF. We saw some good games, and they'd sometimes breach 100 yards. But I feel like towards the end of the season, it definitely like fell off and took a turn. So that's what I'm looking for next season is
Yeah. I,
a viable running back and a run game.
I agree with you. And it's unfortunate that they never really had much of a run game. I think if they did, I think they win 11 games or so, and they're I don't know if they're still playing, but I think that there would have been bigger things in store for them. And yeah, they wound up actually averaging fewer yards this year than last year on the ground, which is insane because they were not good
Yeah.
last year, and they were last in the country both years. Um, but yeah, that was the unfortunate thing. But so many great players on this team, and even the running
hmm
back room. But like we were talking. You mentioned Cam. Um, he's a guy. I think they're going to miss him a ton next year. I think he grew a lot as a leader, as well as
hmm
a player. When I did my postseason awards, actually, I listed him as my most improved player of the year for the Buffs, and I think there's a lot of guys that were candidates for that. But I thought Cam was good last year, and he was great this year. But he was also a phenomenal leader, and I think they're going to miss him. And another guy that was one of my favorites to talk to was Shiloh. Who,
hmm
and
Yeah.
especially when it was him and Shador together. But Shiloh was always great to talk to, and there's just a lot of good personalities on this team, which I think made this year, the last 2 years, but really this year, a lot of fun. There was a lot of good personalities on this team.
hmm Yeah, I really my personal favorite when we were doing like the fall media day stuff, when we were able to get one-on-ones with the players.
Yeah,
Justin Mayers was my favorite interview from that day.
yeah,
All offensive linemen usually have some of the best conversations, but when I was able to talk to Justin, I was like, he was a transfer from UTEP and getting situated, but all of them overall seemed really excited. But I just had like a really good personal conversation with Justin. It's like
yeah,
even though we didn't really get to have that throughout the season, we definitely got to know a lot of players within CU's roster. Like, okay, these are some great people, and all of them are. And I think just the composition of the team from last year to this year, you could tell that it was more unified. They were more on the same page. It was it was better executed, of course. You
yeah,
can tell by the record, but there was you could see the kind of disparateness of last year and how they turned it around, and they're more working as one together this year. And it's kind of one of those intangibles in football. It's you see it and you see it on the field, and
hmm
when a team is actually coming together and all on the same page, it really makes a significant difference. Because we've seen prior CU teams, I mean the 2022 team, others they're just not. No one's really on the same page. They
yeah,
don't necessarily listen to like the head coach and what they want, and players just kind of do whatever they feel like doing and just do like independently. But this year it was of course we saw it with 9 wins. This was one of the better teams we've seen in the past 10 years, and hopefully we'll get better from there. And I'm excited. Every year is a year of new opportunities, and I like some of the transfers they brought in, and
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see how it all comes together because they're losing a lot of big veteran pieces. So
You know,
I think I hope Green Alabama was the biggest one. I
that
was
was a
like,
big
oof.
loss, obviously, for the bowl game. Yeah. And real quick, I just want to touch on something you were talking about, like with this team getting along so well. And, it's funny how at the start of this year, there were stories about the culture and how bad the culture is. And, you know,
Oh my God,
all
yeah.
this stuff that's coming out. But, um, it, the culture is, from our perspective, at least from my perspective, is really good within this program. And I always remember, um, a conversation I had with Shiloh at Big 12 Media Day in Las Vegas when I was talking to him about, like, how do you get guys on the same page that, there's so many transfers coming in every year and things like that. How do you do that? And he said to me, look, he goes, I don't need to hang out with you very long to know if I'm good with you and if we can get along and if we can be, buddies, and
Hmm.
he's like, it doesn't take that long. You hang out with somebody and you figure it out. And Coach Prime has mentioned that young people are easier, they have an easier time of doing that. Maybe,
Yeah.
connecting with people than us old heads.
Yeah. Hmm.
Me, not you. You're still one of the young ones,
Almost
but
25.
yeah.
Not really.
Yeah.
A few
Um,
months.
that was a long time ago for me. Um, but I remember Shiloh telling me that, and I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you saw it with this team that, like, yeah, I mean, there was a lot of camaraderie, and you would watch it in the well-off media and Reach the People videos and the pregame show that, like, when they would show these guys interacting, and, like,
Hmm.
there's guys like they weren't teammates 3 months ago, yet they're having a great time with each other,
Hmm.
and enjoying each other on the sidelines, things like that. And so yeah, it doesn't take long. And this team really bonded, and the players would tell us that all the time throughout the season that, look, we just we have the common goal. We have there's all this stuff we
Hmm.
have that's common, and we just enjoy playing with each other. And I think that was huge. And but that's culture. That's something that it starts with Coach Prime and on down. And that doesn't just happen in the locker room. I think that starts with Coach Prime. And I think that's the underrated thing about this program is, the positive culture that he's set. And yes, there's stories of people that didn't make this team and that weren't, there was maybe shoved out a little bit, that they're not happy with it, but of course they're not, because they're not a part of it. Well, they wanted to be, but they're not a part of it, and so they're a little bit bitter. But those that have
Yeah.
been a part of it, I mean, I'm seeing, Nikki, guys that even towards the end of the year were maybe benched, didn't have the playing time they wanted to, that are still, they still are uh, throwing out positive things on social media about this program, and even
Hmm.
guys that they enter the transfer portal. Khalil Benson's one that I think of that, yes, he
Same.
was injured a little bit, but was not, he did not have anywhere near the season that he thought he would because of injury a little bit. And in that guard rotation, he entered the portal, went back to Indiana, but there was a back and forth with him and Coach Prime after he transfers out, and it was all love, right? And so even
Yeah.
some of these guys that are leaving are like, thank you so much, coach. I appreciate it. And so I think the culture is way more positive than people give it credit for nationally, because I think that's a big reason why they're 9-4 is that it was a good culture.
Oh, definitely. I'm interested to see what exploitative headlines come around next
Mhm.
year because I've
They'll
even
be
well,
there.
especially yeah, especially like these past 2 years, it's just we've kind of seen that it's like inevitable, and a lot of times like I tell people my job and then they ask me, they're like, "Oh, like, did you see what Coach Prime did?" I'm like, "No." I'm like,
Yeah,
because we see it firsthand. We're reporting on the team on a weekly basis. It's like some of these stories that are circulating, it's not truthful and it's not really what's actually going on within the program. And
yeah,
that's literally sometimes what the first people like say to me when they ask, like they just see even the Travis Hunter stuff, like a couple weeks ago, I told someone what I was doing, and they're like, "Oh, like what do you think about Travis Hunter and his like girlfriend and fiance?" And I'm like, "Oh my God!" I'm like, "I'm not. I just report on the football. I'm not there
right.
for like the drama and like all of the you know other things that's going on maybe in their personal life, and like that's just like not my business." And sometimes the way that these are really famous players that we are around and we're reporting on, but it's like we're this is not what we're here to do our job for. Like we're here to be sports reporters, and some of these storylines are just taken way, way out of context. It's like
Right.
it just sucks to see because it's just not what we see, and that's not what we report on. It's
Right.
just yeah.
I tell people
So
that all the time. They're like, well,
yeah.
when I do like radio shows around the country, whatever, they're like, well, what's it like? And I'm like, it's way more normal than you would think. And I always tell people, I'm like, I think they'd be surprised if you just came and covered the team for a week or two to realize, oh, it's actually very football. It's not drama and circus and um it's crazy how many times I've heard this program described as a circus and how I've never felt like I'm covering a circus.
No,
And
never.
now, okay, I wouldn't say never because the first September of 23, um, I wouldn't even say circus. It was a whirlwind and it was crazy.
A lot more
But
media. I'm like, whoa. I mean, a lot more
yeah,
media than we had the
yeah,
year prior.
it was a lot more attention. I still don't know if I would ever describe it as a circus, but it was,
No,
yeah, it was,
more
it's,
popular. Yeah.
yeah, more popular. But this year felt way more normal than even last year. I mean, it just felt like covering a really good football team, and
Hmm.
that's what was fun about it was, you know, and honestly, media wise,
Yeah.
the press conferences were more normal. It was
Hmm.
really nice to like, oh, we just had 20 minutes with Coach Prime and it was all about football. That's awesome. It was not, you know, other stuff that can we stop
Yeah.
the gushing in the
He was
press
always
conference?
straightforward with us. Like
Yeah.
he wasn't he was very transparent and genuine and
Yeah.
yeah, there's just definitely some moments in the press conference like when he was explaining just kind of the current state of college football and the transfer portal and his analogy to the NFL. And like that really is applicable and a great answer to what's happening in this day and age and how the
Yeah.
landscape is completely changing and what it's going to look like in the future. And yeah, I mean, everyone's paying for players. They gave Julian Lewis a lot of money to come play here.
Yeah. Well, it's funny how 2 years ago Coach Prime was being ripped for the way he's doing things, and now coaches are adapting, and that's how they're doing
Everyone,
things, right? It's
yeah,
like, oh,
you gotta do those
he
things.
he
You
kind of
gotta.
knew what he was doing here. So, and I was always behind what he was doing because we saw 2022 and it's like, yeah, this needs an overhaul. It needs to
Oh
happen.
yeah.
And so yeah, but I am curious, and we've been kind of bantering back and forth about this last season, but we should catch up at some time, talk more about upcoming 2025 and transfers and all that stuff. But I'm curious to see it. The roster's coming together. There's gonna be a lot more changes, but yeah, it's coming together at this point in time. I'll ask you this one last thing is
Mm.
that obviously you work for the Rivals Network and recruiting rankings, things like that. What do you think about this the class so far they're putting together? Is there anybody that stands out to you the most? Like what just kind of give me your thoughts on the class.
I mean, overall, I think the guy who like pops off the page, well, two guys, quarterback, Caden Salter,
Mhm.
that quarterback competition will be interesting because you have two dual threat quarterbacks, one with a lot more college experience than Julian Lewis, who is one of the best players, top five quarterback, for best quarterback in the 2025 class. So,
Yeah.
but Jaheim Odom, I mean, the Colorado's defensive line needed a lot of help with some of the departures that they're having and graduation, NFL, whatnot. But I think when you pick up a guy from Alabama who's 6'5", 325 pounds, and comes from the SEC and comes from a program that is very notable, is known for a very versatile, well-sized defense. Sometimes I think we've seen in the past, like Hawkes or Jaquez Robinson. He was also from Alabama. Charles Kelly brought some of his guys over, but we didn't see them necessarily like pop off the page. But I do like what Jaheim Otis brings.
Yeah.
Started 10 games as a freshman 2022. Had some action there, and I think he's going to be a guy who starts immediately. Vontae Bentley going to the NFL, and then Nikhil Green, of course, is gone. They needed a linebacker, and I like Reginald Hughes from Jacksonville State. Had a really productive season last year.
Yep.
He finished last year with 82 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks, and was named first team All Conference USA as they won the Conference USA championship. I think he brings a lot of production, and I think something we've are familiar with is like, how are these guys going to adjust from the Group 5 to
Yeah.
the Power 4? And sometimes there is that fall off. However, when they're putting up numbers like this, it's like, okay, that can definitely be translated and applied into what the Buffs are doing, Power 4. I think Reginald Hughes is also going to be an immediate guy that jumps in. Buck Buchanan, kicker,
Yeah.
we can't forget about the kickers, and we did not forget about it this year. Lack of
I
touchbacks for sure.
I can't wait. I hope that the Buffs win the coin toss for that opener and defer so they can kick off because I want to see just
Mm-hmm.
that first kickoff go through the end zone, so that just Coach Prime would be, yes, finally,
Yeah,
I've got one going through the end zone.
yeah. But overall, they picked up 14 guys so far, and most of them have been defensive tackles.
Yeah, I
I
like
have the
Marte.
list in front of me, but yeah,
I like
you go
Martavius French too. I mean, he's
same.
another linebacker, highly productive from UTSA, which is
Yep.
ironic. That's where the Buffs were practicing was UTSA's facilities for the Alamo Bowl, and he was not there because he was at his own bowl game. But they pick him up. Uh, it'd be interesting to see if like him and Reginald Hughes are that linebacker duo. They obviously have Salter's brother coming over from TCU as well,
Mm-hmm.
Kylan Salter. So yeah, there's some interesting players in this class, but you know we'll talk more about it because there's going to be a lot more additions coming up in the next
Yeah.
month or so. But we ought to catch up in a month or so and maybe go over some of that stuff and talk about the class more. But it's just getting started.
Yeah.
There's like
It's
14,
chill
15 guys,
January.
and yeah, and yeah, it's gonna be a lot different. But Nikki, it was a lot of fun covering this last
Mm-hmm.
season with you the last few years, but I mean this last season especially. And a lot of fun 2024 season. So I appreciate
Mm-hmm.
you taking some time to recap it with me.
Definitely. I appreciate this conversation. It was like relaxed. I'm like, it's good to catch up with you because you're so knowledgeable and you've been around the Buffs a lot. And I definitely learned a lot from you and your work. And yeah, I'm glad we were able to sit down and chat. And yeah, another wild season in the books and another one in the future for sure.
Yeah, and hopefully it's another good season as well. And me and Nikki and a lot of other people will be there, and it's always good to get different perspectives from the different writers, things like that. And I'm hoping to catch up with more of them, reach out to a few of them, and hopefully over the next few weeks catch up with a few more of them. But Nikki, thanks a lot, and enjoy some downtime a little bit. I know you got a lot of work. You do some things with Yahoo as well, and you'll be very
Hmm.
busy. But enjoy a little bit of downtime after a crazy football season.
Oh, yes, I certainly will. I'm trying to plan a trip to New Mexico, see if that figures out. Gotta text my mom.
Well, good luck with that. We'll catch up as we get closer to spring ball. And Buff fans, thanks for watching and listening, and we'll see y'all soon.